So, I'm Bob McNally, and these are the live streaming Strumstick lessons. And the tune we're going to do tonight is Friend of the Devil, Grateful Dead. And there was a little riff that we kind of hit through, I think, last week that reminded me of this tune. And it's a great tune that lies nicely on the Strumstick, and we're playing it in key of D here. And if you look up on the upper right part of the screen, you'll see there's tablature with lines representing the three strings and fret numbers written on the strings. There are also chord symbols, letter names for chords, D, G, A, G, and the substitute in E minor is possible there. So there's chords and notes, and this is the main riff that runs through a lot of this song. So if you put your finger on this second string at the third fret, and I would suggest using either your second finger or your third finger for this, because we're going to be moving down. So if you're at your third finger, you have 3 at the third fret, and then you can go to the second fret and use your second finger for that. And then first fret, and you could use your first finger for that. Now you could just use your first finger for all of those notes. So I'm going to start with just my first finger. And then it moves over to the third string. And at some points it goes to the open note. Sometimes it holds on the 1. So that's 3, 2, 1, 0, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 0, 3, 2, 1. So that's kind of the basic riff in the song. And here's with the close-up camera of the fretting. So here's third fret, second fret on the second string, first fret on the second string, open on the second string, and that's just everything open, which happens a lot of times. Then third fret on the third string, second fret on the third string, first fret, and then if you're going to the open, so there's just 3, 2, 1, 0, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now that 3, 2, 1, 0 on the third string could also be done as 3, 2, 1, 0. Whoops, sorry. 3, 2, 1, 0 on the first string. Because remember, the first string and the third string are an octave apart, so those notes are interchangeable. You could also do both of them, which would give you throughout the song if you wanted, but it's kind of a bass line that we're playing there, so that's kind of a key element of the song. So the rhythm for this is they do it with a kind of a country swing kind of. But I've also heard it done fast, like a full-on bluegrass tune. But I'm going to suggest that we do it actually as a slow tempo. This song lays very nicely at a moderately slow tempo. Or even slower. Because right in the song, the guy says, I set out running, but I take my time. And that's, you can kind of take your time through this. And that's a good idea. That's a good idea to take your time through stuff when you're learning a tune anyway. Because it's if you practice at the edge of your speed, you make a lot more mistakes. I think it's much better to play at the speed that you don't make mistakes or hardly ever make mistakes until you get really solid with that, and then start to speed it up. volleyball coach once used to say, practice makes permanent. So if you're playing at the ragged edge of your speed where you make a lot of mistakes, you're actually, think about it, you're actually practicing making mistakes. You're not practicing doing it right. Now, when you've got a tune and you're working on speeding it up because you want to play it at a faster tempo, you do have to start to push the speed, but don't push it up to the point where you're making lots of mistakes. Push it up to where it's like just barely in control, but you're not making mistakes, and play it at that speed for a while, and then increase another increment in speed. And it's surprising that once you've got the actual mechanics of a song worked out, getting faster is dependent on those mechanics. So that if you've got where the notes are and you've figured out your fingerings, you've learned the chords, you're familiar with the melody you're going to sing with it, you can work on just doing those mechanics steadily faster and faster, much more easily than you can learn the mechanics while trying to do it too fast. So I'm a huge fan of playing things slowly, and I'm no enemy of mistakes. Mistakes are inevitable, and you can count your progress by the trail of wreckage of mistakes behind you. And I encourage people to make mistakes and not to worry about mistakes. But by the same token, if you are working for a mistake-free rendering of a song or a relatively mistake-free rendering of the song, it's really good to work on it slow in a nice, safe environment where you can kind of keep on top of what you're doing. Oh yeah, now I'm over to the second string, and now I'm going to the third string. Oh yeah, I got this. This is great. Okay, and maybe I'll try speeding it up a little. Wait a minute, I lost where I was. I did it right, but I don't even know where I am. See, that's the kind of mental breakdown that happens when you push it to the edge of your speed. So if that's the speed you aspire to, or even faster, don't start at that speed. Take it nice and slow and steady. So that's the tempo we're going to work on this at to begin with. Now, I've written chords there too, because you could finger chords for this. Let me bring up the chord chart. Okay, it's this has to move up. There we go. Okay, this chord chart was designed for when I was using the dark background. I'm currently using that light background. Excuse me. But if you look at the top of the chord chart, you'll see that this is a D, and there's a G, and there's an A, D, the G, and the A fingerings. And I'm going to take this away, but that is there if you want to go back and reference that, or it's on our website. So we've got I lit out from Reno, I was trailed by 20 hounds again. Didn't get to sleep last night till the morning came around. I set out running, better take my time. A friend of the devil is a friend of mine. Now, in the song, they play an E minor chord there, which I think works better on guitar in that spot than it does on Strumstick. A friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight. So I'm going to substitute the G chord there instead of the E minor, but technically it's the E minor that belongs there. So it's I went out from Reno, I was trailed by 20 hounds. Didn't get to sleep last night till the morning came around. I set out running, better take my time. Friend of the devil's a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, I just might get some sleep tonight. Set out running, better take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, I just might get some sleep tonight. you could play through it with just the chords, but we're going to start with this bass line. And then we're going to add some chord fingerings to that to make that even fuller. But so I lit out from Reno, I was trailed by 20 hounds, didn't get to sleep last night till the morning come around. I set out running, but I take my time, friend of the devil is a friend of mine. If I get home before daylight, just might get some sleep tonight. And there's a little bass run on that long turnaround A chord there that we're going to work in. So I would say the basic way to start this is with the bass line instead of the chords until you get that down. And you can just play that bass line over and over. Until you've got that really solid, because if you're going to try to sing with it, you've got to have it completely on muscle memory there, so you're not having to think about it. You've got enough to think about with the words, and you're singing in tune and things like that. And then the chords in the set out running, taking my time. Okay, now what can we do to dress this up now? What can we do to make it more interesting? We can hammer on that first note of the bass line. So instead of going, we're going to go and slam that finger on. And then, by the way, that second fret on the second string note, people often hear that as a dissonance because it's just a half tone away from the first string. Now, it would fit as a major seventh chord. If we had more notes around it, it would feel like a jazz chord. But you're not wrong if you hear that all exposed by itself as a kind of a slightly sour tone. But we're only passing through it. So your ear follows that melody line. And if it really bothers you, you can finger the mini chord. So you've got second string third fret and you've got first string second fret. See, now it's a little more palatable because we've surrounded it with the rest of the notes it would have in a kind of a major seventh chord. That you could put in there, maybe the second or third time, however many repeats before you put that variation in. But I'm still going to play that just as the single note there, and when we're playing it slowly, like I said, there's an energetic flavor to that harmony group. And then I did the hammer on at the third fret also, so it's bottom, boom, 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 bottom, boom, boom, boom. So let's play that. And the strumming rhythm is down, up, down, 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 down, up, down. But you could always add more upstrums or leave out a downstrum by doing a fake downstrum, as we've discussed in the past. So you've got a bunch of fake downstrums there. And one of the things that the fake downstrum does is it leaves the note that you just played kind of exposed rather than it being covered up by another downstrum or another upstrum. It sort of hangs out there by itself. So you have much more dramatic exposing of that line than if you had I did that with fake down strums in between, only one strum on each one of those elements. Now, since we're going 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and, or 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2. One of those 1, 2, 3, 4 rhythms with a couple of up strums in, and we're doing the hammer on. I think 1 and 2 and is a nice phrasing there. 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Another hammer on the first fret note if you want. So we just went from one hammer on in a 4-beat phrase, 8-beat phrase, and then again to 2 of them. And I'm going to do that once more at a slower tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 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 3, 4. And the and after the 1 is the hammer on, not an up strum. Bottom, bottom. And you've probably figured out that you could hammer on this note, that note, that note. You can't hammer on an open string to an open string. There's no place to hammer to. So now you could hammer on any or all of those bass line notes. We kind of set up that hammering on the 3rd fret, hammering on the 1st fret, hammering on the 3rd fret, hammering on the 1st fret is a nice, reasonably complicated mix. But let's see what happens if I hammer on all of them. And where you can't do a hammer on to keep that bodum, bodum, bodum thing going on the open string, you could do the up strum there to fill in the and. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you can provide the missing hammer on these open strings could be the up strum that you do there. Now it's nice leaving up strums out because it leaves room for what's happening. So I don't want to do a hammer on and do an up strum at the same time. You don't get that nice sustained boom, boom, the legato note, the one note moving to the other without being struck again. That gets covered up if you do an up strum there. See, it's a different sound with the hammer on. So leave out, generously leave out the up strums. Keep this kind of open and spacious. Built. So I did just here and here the first time through, and then here, 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 here the second time through, and then I did here, 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 open, here, 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 open the third time through. So now you have a development. So if you get to the point where you can hammer on any of those notes, you're comfortable doing that, you could start the song. Let's take it slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's 1, 2, 3, 4. One hammer on here and here to start. Two hammer on at the first fret, the third fret and the first fret, third fret and first fret. And now all of them. Oops. And here's those three in sequence up to speed, up to a faster speed, just for demonstration. Starting with so there's a really nice rhythmic development. And since this line happens many times throughout the song, you might, keep it one way for a whole verse and then another way for the next verse and a more complicated way for the third verse. Or you could mix them up in the course of the various verses. So just let me sing the first line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I lit out from Reno. I was trailed by 70 hounds. Didn't get to sleep last night till the morning came around. I set out running, but I take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, just might get some sleep tonight. Now, what are we going to do with those four measures? On that A chord. If you play from this second string open, third fret on the third string, second fret on the third string, and first fret on the third string, which is almost doing our, let's see, here we go. I can't get underneath it. So it's the 3, 2, 1 on the third string, starting from this open note here. So it's all working off that A chord. We're kind of letting go of the A and going over to here. Now, if you want to really keep the A-ness happening, you could put first finger here and pinky here. If you want to hold this note that's first fret on the first string, so that's... But I think it works fine to go... There's a little implied chord change there that works fine in that spot. I'm going to bring this camera just a hair tilted down a little lower. Okay. So you can get the right hand a little bit better there. All right. So that would be. So that's the transition at the end of the verse into the next verse, that descending bass line, which is starting from second string open, and then 3, 2, 1, sort of holding the A chord as you go through that. There's another way to do that also, which is you could be fingering, see, this is one of the versions to substitute for an A chord, this bar at the 4th fret. Now I'm going to put it with 3 fingers. So I have some fingers available to move. I could even use these 3 fingers. So that's 2, 3, and 4 fingers on strings 3, 2, and 1. 2, 3, and 4 on third, second, and first strings. And that holds the A chord also. So the key part to that is these two fingers. So that's another way to get that. While still keeping the A chord happening. Okay, now so we've got the hammering on in a lot of spots. And we've got this descending bass line on the A chord. As you come around to the first verse, if you've used up all of those things in the first verse, where do you go from there? So there's no reason that you couldn't use the mini chord and then finger the G chord. See how I did that? So here's the G, which gives me the 3 on the bottom string. 3, 2. Now that turns the G into a B minor, technically, but it's a bass note passing through the G chord, and then, which is the G chord, the essence of the G chord with an added E note to it, and then to the open string, so you've got and that would give you and when you go to that, you could go and force the change back to a D chord by removing this finger. If you want it to hold on the G, then keep that finger there. You could even go and finger the G, even though you're not getting that open string there. This is getting a little esoteric, but here's what we've got. Let's see. I gotta get where the lyrics are here. Spent the night in Utah in a cave up in the hills. Ran into the devil and he left me 30 bills. And then again, I set out running, but I take my time, friend. Now here we can add a little melody note. Set out running, but I take my time. See, there's the melody. Set out running, but I take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. Or friend of the devil is a friend of mine. And if you want to open up this first and second string on that, friend of the devil is a friend of mine, or just friend of the devil is a friend of mine. That's a harmony note. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight. Just might get some sleep. Just might. Just might. Just might. Just might. Just might. So the melody is just might, and the harmonies are just might. Just might. Just might get some sleep tonight. So that's the second verse, trying the mini chords. Whoop. Or depending on whether you're holding that G chord. And then set out running. Okay, so that's the second verse. Now, just as you hammered on, you could hammer on, just as you hammered on the bass note, you could hammer on the whole mini chord. Now, hammering on the G chord is a little tricky, so you could fake it by just going and not do the whole thing, because you've done the hammer on here. You can finger the bottom note on the G and just hammer on the first finger. And hammer on the whole D chord. So there's so that would get you through the third verse. And then there's a bridge. Now this bottom line, where it goes A, G, A, E minor, G, A, it goes, it finishes the little refrain. It said, out running, better take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before midnight, just might get some sleep tonight. And then it stays on the A. I got 2 reasons why I cry each lonely night. So it's a bunch of bars of the A. Got 2 reasons why I cry each lonely night. First one's named Sweet Anne Marie, and she's my heart's delight. Second one, we go, for 2 reasons why I cry each lonely night. First one's named Sweet Anne Marie, and she's my heart's delight. At delight, I think go back to the A. She's my heart's delight. You could hold the G. She's my heart's delight. Second one is prison babe, sheriff's on my trail. And now here, E minor, if he catches up with, and if he catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. And if he catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. So that's the chords for the bridge part, and then you could still do that. That descending line from the A. And then back to now there's stuff that you can do to fill in and put some stuff going on in those long extended A chords on that bridge also. So you got, you could do hammering on. Set out running, but I take my time. Set out running, but I take my time. And the same thing on the G chord. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. Hammer on the first fret note or hammer on the third fret note. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. Now hammering on with your pinky, that's an acquired skill. So you could just finger this pinky note and hammer on just the first fret note. But there's a descending bass line you could do from the G. First one's named Sweet Anne Marie, and she's my heart's delight. Reasons why I cry each lonely night. First one's named Sweet Anne Marie, and she's my heart's delight. That's probably the best combination there. just do that. Don't do that bass line twice. Just do it once. And then keep going with just the plain G chord. And then to the A. Got two reasons why I cry each lonely night. First one's named Sweet Marie, and she's my heart's delight. Second one is Prison Babe, sheriff's on my trail, and if he catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. So you see how those bass lines feed into each other as you come around each time. And I think that the nice thing with that hammer on the A, this is, if you ever listen to her bagpipes, they go, there's that little push as they do the squeeze on the bellows that they're keeping full with by blowing into it, but they're giving it a little accent by pushing hard on the bag of the bagpipes to push a little burst through the pipes. And that's what this is kind of like. So I'm out running, but I take my time. We're on got two reasons why I cry each lonely night. And it's a nice dramatic brum, 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 brum. And because it's repeated 4 times is about as many as you can get away with a trick. Without losing people and giving away your secrets. So this is just the right length for that. Got two reasons why I cry each lonely night. First one's named Sweet Marie, and she's my heart's delight. Because this is familiar. People have heard that before. So you're giving the little fancy thing. And it's like, oh, what's that? What's that? And then you take them to slightly familiar but still fancy. And then you hit them one more time. So it's got reasons. What's the word? You got reasons why it's a lonely night. First one's named Sweet Marie, she's my heart's delight. Second one is Prison Babe, sheriff's on my trail, and if he catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. Okay, so that's a pretty good basic structure for a bunch of different varying elements to go through the song. Now, it really calls for some kind of an instrumental melody after that bridge before you go back to the verse that preceded it. And you could work out a whole... a very complicated, counter melody, and try to work that into the chords. That's getting a little beyond the scope of what we're trying to cover here. But what you can do is you can, by adding notes to each of the fingerings, magic sequence. 2nd fret, 1st fret open on the 1st string. 1st fret open. 1st fret open. 1st string. 2nd fret, 1st fret open. 2nd string, 1st fret open. 3rd string, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 1st string open, or just 2nd string, 2nd fret, 1st fret open. So you've got 2, 1, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0. In key of D, you can add those notes to almost any other fingering you're doing. And if it doesn't bother you, then you've got a little melody possibility. So if you're playing... and you want to be the rhythm guitar doing that, well, Jerry takes the lead on the mandolin. Whatever Jerry would have played there. You could go... So nothing, bum, 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 to what I was already doing. And that comes out like. So that gives you the effect of a melody there. I've just tried to grab any old note that I could reach with some free finger that last time through there. But that gives you the ear perceives that as a lead part because you're hearing what you heard before plus extra notes put on, and the extra notes add to the changing notes that you're doing with the bass line, and your ear hears ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Maybe you go up to even to the third fret there. So you got two notes. If he catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. And what I did there was I extended each chord by an extra measure. So instead of going, I went. That's another slightly tricky way to create an instrumental break is take the chords of the verse, but make each chord happen for twice as long. And that fills in with interesting melody and covers a space of a break and takes the same amount of time as if you did this twice. Okay. Yes, Susan just came on. Hi, Susan. Thank you for finding it. The issue was my fault, by the way. I neglected to put the link on the web page for this week's lesson. And then I discovered that when I realized that no one had checked in, and so I did go and change that on the web page. So when you came in later, you found it correctly. So thank you for finding it. I hope somebody else finds it too. And we're going to cover this same material again, I think, next week, because that was completely my mistake. But the video will still be here for this. And what I'm going to do now, in case, on the off chance that anybody has joined in late and wants a quick review, I'm going to run through the various elements we did with this, and then I'm going to play through, and that will wrap it up for tonight. And then we'll pick it up again next week. So the first thing we did was the bass line, which is, calling anything a bass line on the Strumstick is a little affected because there's no real bass notes on it. But relatively speaking, it's what the bass would be playing. The doom, 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 doom. So we're playing on the second string 3, 2, 1, 0, and then on the third string 3, 2, 1, 0. And we're just doing that to start the song. Maybe 2 times. minor that they're using on the guitars and things, but I like the G better. Set out running, better take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, just might get some sleep tonight. And we also had a bass run there, which is almost the same as the bass run from the G chord. So the first verse is and then we did mini chords. And that whole sequence done slowly there is, when I play this song with friends, I tend to play it that slow. I lit out from Reno, I was trailed by 20 hounds. I think it's very interesting done slowly. We added hammering on. Either just at the 3rd fret or 3rd fret, 1st fret, 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 1st fret, 3rd fret, 1st fret, or all of them. Now you can't hammer on open to open. Gives you a whole series of things to vary the subsequent verses with, between the mini chords and even hammering on parts of the mini chords themselves. And then we did the got 2 reasons why I cry with the little hammer on at the beginning of it. Got 2 reasons why I cry each lonely night. First one stays sweet memory, and she's my heart's new light. Second one is prison babe, sheriff's on my trail. If she catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. And then we took a break by a couple ways, by either doing the bass line but adding in extra notes. To get a semblance of a lead part in there. We also looked at doubling the numbers of measures of each of those chords. And you could work in, if you wanted to, you could figure out a... work Pachelbel's canon in there. You could figure out a complicated lead part that would let you still keep the bass line going and get some kind of a more coherent melody going on the first string. But that's pushing it, and that's highly optional. So at this point, here's the... we'll go through the song more or less. I'll probably throw some other things in too, and mess with this for next week. And we'll go through it again, and then we'll try another song too. So here we go. So, and again, I recommend a slow least to start it and get used to it. And I'm starting off there with the hammering on as a little bit of a little, a little flourish kind of at the beginning. But I'm not going to do that when I start the verse because I want to save that for development as I get a little farther in. So. Muting there. Get home before daylight. Just might get some sleep tonight. Cherokee. First one says she got my child, but it don't look like me. I set out running, but I take my time. Friend of the devil's a friend of mine. I get home before daylight. Just might get some sleep and up to speed. And then ended on the A chord there. Okay, so thank you, Susan, for finding where the stream actually was, and anyone else that made it to here, despite my blunder. But I will correct that for next week, and we will see you all next Thursday. And I hope you have a well week and get some chance to play some Strumstick and work on the bits and pieces and start to put them together. And we'll address it a little bit further next week on Thursday. Good night.